Welcome to Masters of Self University podcast, your highest source of sacred truths and universal wisdom. Hello, beautiful souls. I'm Rachel Fiori, mystic, spiritual teacher, psychic healer, and founder of Masters of Self University. Join our journey of soul transformation as we deep dive into this latest episode.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Masters of Self University podcast. I'm your host, Ellie Lee.
And I'm your host, Morley. And today we're going to be talking about releasing energy and why that's not healing. So I had an experience recently where I was hanging out with some friends. We're playing some music, and this friend of mine started drumming really intensely, and I got super drained after it. And I realized, all of that pent up, built up anger, frustration that was in him was just pouring out into the drum set. And me being a highly sensitive person, I was soaking it all up. And we've had many conversations about this in the past. Like, I know that things like this can feel really therapeutic, and it can feel really good because you're releasing out all of this density. You're getting rid of the anger and the frustration, but only temporarily. And what is actually happening on an energetic level when we release our energies, our pain? What's happening, Rachel?
So I love this topic because it's one of, I think, confusion and misunderstanding a lot. And it's one where people tend to get so stuck and trapped because they really do try to do all the things to heal themselves. Like a lot of you listeners out there, like I know you are doing a lot of things because you really do want to heal, you want to be whole, and you want to elevate. And I applaud you for that. It's wonderful. But we get trapped in like, oh, look, I'm going to release. I'm going to do this releasing ceremony. I'm going to go to the gym and use that as a stress release. I'm going to, drum. I'm going to play my music. I'm going to do all the things that are beautiful, wonderful things. Never, ever, ever is the teaching that these are not beautiful, wonderful things to participate in. But when we understand energy never dies, where are you releasing the energy to? It's going somewhere. If you're not alchemizing the frustration, the anger, the stress, all you're doing is sending it off into the air, into the environment. If there are people in the same room, in the same household as you, guess what happens when you walk around with anger and frustration, or when you quote unquote release it? You are sending that energy to the people literally in your house, your roommates, your family members, your children, your pets. You are sending that negative energy and they are taking it in and taking it on without realizing it. You're not paying attention. You're vacuuming the house. You're, running around doing whatever you're doing in the day. And you don't realize you're then being blasted with someone else's negative energy. And all of a sudden you're exhausted and you're tired and you're like, oh, why do I feel this way? That's why you feel that way. It's why you can feel that way when you go to public places and you're just around people, period, at the grocery store or at a festival. It doesn't matter where it is. You're taking on other people's energies, and taking on doesn't mean, block yourself. Don't let it. No, we are all energy. Everybody is going to feel it in some way. So the person who was doing the releasing, like your example with your friend who was drumming, he may have felt great right after that. And then he might even think, see, because this is my passion. I love drum, blah, blah. Music is amazing. Music is healing. Well, actually, we don't understand energetics. It isn't, and sound healing, sound is very healing. That's a different topic. It'll get too confusing to bring that in here. So I don't want people to think that like sound healing or playing is not a beautiful, wonderful thing that can create a lot of beautiful, positive energy. It can, but when it is used for releasing my negative shit inside of me, all you're doing is sending that shit to the environment, to the room you're in, to the other people around you, to be picked up later. Somebody walks in the room later, they're walking into a room full of negative energy. And then that's going into their energy fields. And the second thing is you didn't heal anything when you quote unquote release that energy. The wounds that are there are still there. So this releasing energy is not transformation. It is called translocation. You're sending that energy off to somewhere else, to something else. You yourself still have the wound of why you get triggered in anger and frustration to begin with. If that is not seen, understood, and addressed, you will be releasing, quote unquote, or using your coping strategies for the rest of your life and then harming others in the meantime because you're sending that negative energy out to the world. So our responsibility is really to go in and understand this and heal the wounds and then play the drums, work out at the gym, do yoga, sing our songs, do whatever you're doing from a healed place, a place of, that's an example of the way of purity, the 20 universal ways of oneness. Come from a pure place. Then what you're putting out to the world is the energy of love, positivity. It's uplifting, it's joyous, it's powerful, it's empowering, it's whatever it is, but it isn't anger, it isn't frustration, and all the other negative energies that just cause more harm and make this planet and people around us more dense.
Yeah. Before I heard you at all I was learning it was let it go, release, 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 release.
Yeah.
And I remember I got into breath work heavily because everybody was telling me that was the answer, right?
Mhm.
And it was like, well, it's because it's your breath, and that's activating the power within, and that's gonna do this, this, and that. And I remember being in this room full of people, and everybody was just purging, crying,
Yep.
screaming, and all this stuff. And I walked out, and I was like, I feel great. And the thing that I quote unquote released was like this dread program that I run, right? And so for a week, I was like, oh my God, this is the answer, this is the answer. And then, a week goes by and it comes right back. And it's like, that's when I started realizing nothing's actually happening. I'm just letting quote unquote this go. But that's all we're taught out there in the healing word everywhere. Every single person I follow, they all just talk about let it go, let it go. My closest friends, just release it, just release it. And until I heard you speaking about what it actually means to release and what that's doing, I mean, that blew my mind, because like that makes so much sense as to why we continue to cycle, why these wounds and these energies keep coming back, because you're not transforming anything. And the other day I was watching Joe Dispenza, and like, his work profoundly helped me at the time that it needed to help me. But even he doesn't talk about actually transforming energy. He just talks about like reprogramming, being in the energy of what you want, but it's actually not addressing any wounds at all, or any energies of unworthiness, of dread, of all these things. And it's like, this is what keeps people exactly where they are. There's no actual elevation, evolution, or anything happening.
Exactly. And you hit the nail on the head. One beautiful thing you said a lot of beautiful things there, but one I want to point out is that like nothing's happening. This is what that nothing's happening. Although you feel like something's happening, what happens a week later or 2 weeks later? Or what happens when you're in a meeting or in a situation where it's not exactly appropriate to suddenly stop and start doing breath work? Like, that's not the most practical thing to always go to, right? And think about this. This is an easy one. It doesn't mean everybody needs to be an athlete, but you understand this. If you are in the middle of, you have 10 seconds left, are you just going to stop and do breath work?
Right.
You have 10 seconds. How long is it going to take you to do your breath work to get in a better place, to release your shit out, and then move on and like maybe have that game winning play or shot or whatever? Really think about what makes sense. You always have you. If you know how to transform energy, then you can do it. Sometimes when you master it, you can do it instantaneously. You can do it in a very short period of time. You can do it in the middle of a game. If you're an athlete, you can do it in the middle of a business meeting that is awful. You can do it anywhere because you're always with you. Even when you're talking and conversing and having a conversation or anything, you can do that in the moment once you're able to get to that level and master the work without having to change your breath, without having to do anything else where people are like, what are you doing? That's very disruptive and distracting. What are you doing? Instead of just, I'm going to sit here and alchemize because there's some shit coming up right now. And I need to be the powerful me, right? It's understanding that although you know, there's a lot of people out there that offer, you know, wonderful work because it helps to get people to wake up a little bit. Another thing that you said, Ellie, was be in the vibrational frequency of. Okay, so here's the shortcoming of that teaching. You're not when inside of your energy fields are these wounds and programs that are there. Like, they actually exist. The energies of those programs have to actually be alchemized so they don't exist in you anymore. Otherwise, no matter what you're trying to manifest, you still have these other negative energies. So they are always going to be interfering. They're always going to be blocking. They're always going to be making it harder to manifest. So instead of focusing on manifesting, focusing on alchemizing, seeing what's inside of me, alchemizing what is inside of me, so it is simply no longer inside of me. Guess what's left? Nothing but your divinity and abundance of your divinity. If you focus on the beautiful part about the 20 universal ways of oneness is you learn how to become each and every way. But what does it mean to become each and every way? It means to heal everything that is blocking you from the beingness of that way. So here's the real clue here. For those of you who have read the 20 Universal Ways of Oneness, the book, and those of you who are familiar with these ways at this point, here's a secret. For the most part, you already are these ways. You just are functioning and showing up in the world with all these programs, levels of consciousness, all these wounds, all these things that block you from being those ways. So you want to really manifest something in your life, heal your shit. Don't release it out into the world. You don't know anything and understand energy, anything about energy when you do that. That's not an insult. I'm not putting you down. I'm giving you the truth so that you can actually shift and change in the ways you want to. This is priceless information to understand we're doing it wrong, right? So that's what helps us to learn how to do it right. And by right and wrong, I just mean, how do we actually alchemize so that when we do focus our attention on something, we would like something to come in? It just does. There's no blocks. There's no slowing it down or interferences getting in the way.
Do you think you can alchemize without knowing what you're doing? In terms of, if you haven't learned this work and you're moving through life at your own pace, and because I am in the belief that some things can heal through, and you can do this process, albeit won't be very efficient, wouldn't be like what we teach, but maybe one wound that you work on throughout a lifetime that you've been going into over the course of maybe like 20 years, like you spent this lifetime trying to get over feeling unworthy or inadequate.
That's beautiful. So you can absolutely heal certain things without realizing it when you are a person who, let's say, for example, integrity is really important to you. So you're making the choice to be a person of integrity. You're making the choice to be honest, not to lie. Like, you're not going to sneak around and cheat on your partner. You would absolutely never in your life do that. When you are choosing certain qualities and characteristics, like, I am a person of integrity, I'm an honest person. Well, guess what those are anyway? Those are ways of oneness. So if you really are focused on being that, what would you then not be? Anything less than that. Does that make sense? So if you're focused on the way of truth, but you don't know it, you never read the book, you don't know what the ways of oneness are, you have no idea that's an aspect of oneness consciousness. You just know you want to be a very honest person. There are a lot of people out there like, honesty is really important to me. I don't lie. Okay. So that means because you are choosing to not lie at all to anyone under any circumstances, you are not going to lie. Can any other programs and blocks that are the opposite of lying, to be dishonest, anything even remotely coming into your energy fields that's slightly dishonest will heal immediately. You make one mistake, you tell one little white lie, oh my God, but you own it. you come clean, you work through it, you talk about it. That is literally being the way of responsibility, the way of truth, also the way of integrity. So when you are just showing up like that without realizing it's oneness consciousness, the ways, you're owning your mistake. I got to tell you, that was fucked up. I lied. I'm coming clean. Then when you do that, what you lied about, the harm you caused, gets alchemized because of the way you're showing up in that scenario. That is working on the energy without realizing it, right? So can you heal your deepest, darkest wounds by default without realizing it? No.
Yeah.
No. But smaller ones that are, yes, you can, because you're choosing to be that, more divine person, more honest person of integrity, whatever. And think about it. Those are the ways of oneness anyway.
Right.
You heal by default by focusing on being those.
The process of alchemy, the internal alchemy that you teach us all is like, I never would have got there on my own. Like, there's no way. One of the things you always say is energy can only be experienced, and that experience of understanding what it is, I never would have. And I can't put it into words because, as I just said, it can only be experienced. And this is what we offer. We offer a full experience of what it means to heal. Healing isn't just like something we write down in a journal or a thought that we have. It's an actual energetic experience of transforming and alchemizing the energy. And that doesn't mean just having the feeling of it releasing. And I did breath work for a while, and I've had this experience of knowing what it means to release. And now I've had the experience of knowing what it means to alchemize and to transform, to transmute the energy. And now I know what that experience is and what it feels like in my body. I can do that, as you said, like in this podcast. I can do it while I'm driving my car. I can do it while I'm scrolling on Instagram. Oh, I'm on Instagram. Something I just felt just triggered me. Let me drop in and let me open up this energy. And it's so weird to use words and say things like that, because this is an experience. It's like there's no words that we can use in this podcast that can explain the work that we teach, because it happens internally. It's that journey inwards. One thing I would like you to really talk on is there has been healings that I've had within myself and with others that I have felt things release. I have felt energies be released in my body, tensions be released, or sometimes I'll move through a healing, and after that, my body is craving for me to stretch in a certain way, because I can tell there was an energy that was in there that was holding a muscle tight, and now it does actually need to be released.
Yes.
So what's the difference between that kind of release versus doing the breath work, that kind of releasing?
Yeah, that's a great question. So number one is you learn the different levels and layers to this work, different levels and layers of subtle energies. Okay. So on one hand, an actual release, one example of what an authentic release is, according to like energetic science, when we talk about how energies actually work, some of what can be released are energies that belong to other people. Sometimes it is not your job to alchemize their energy for them. So it won't. And if that's trapped in your body and your energy fields, guess what? Almost everybody has energies from other people. Hands down, like about 100% of the time. Period, end. Because you have your attachments to like your parents or your partner, your friend, family members. Like you have other people's energies trapped in there often. And so releasing an actual, the positive definition, an accurate definition of what an energetic release truly is, one of them is sometimes when you are alchemizing and healing, you will release certain energies, but those didn't belong to you to begin with. You're attached to them. You're holding on to them without realizing it. And those energies go back to where they belong. They go back to the person that they originated from.
Whoa.
So cool.
So that is it. You want to talk about energetics. That is the definition of release, that this wasn't mine to begin with. It belonged to, you know, my mom or my dad or my sister or my, oh my God, people and their exes. Holy shit. There's so many energies from exes. People go through a divorce, a breakup, and what they're releasing, what has been trapped in their body forever, is actually belongs to an ex. And it's still trapped in there. And when they do the work of alchemizing, they alchemize all the things that that energy magnetized and attached to, energetic attachment, which is keeping it and holding it there. And so when you alchemize your energies around that, there's a release of their energy and it goes back to them where it belongs. So that's one example.
So it's that people absorb it. We absorb our ex's energy. Like, why do we take on their energy?
Gosh, we have a 3-hour podcast today. So in order to keep this really simple, for this topic, we don't realize it, but we grab on and hold on to people. This is what it means to be attached. So when we judge that person because they were an asshole, do you know what they did to me? When we judge them, when we hold grudges, when we hold resentment, we are then holding on to their shit and we are keeping it held to us. And that's now functioning as who we are. And that's making us sick, and that's making us depressed, and that's making us whatever it makes us. When we carry unforgiveness because that person, you know what they did to me? They were a fucking asshole. She was a blah, 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 blah. We are literally taking stuff from them and holding it on and carrying around the burden of that. So and don't anybody misunderstand and think, oh, great. So all this negative energy about my ex, I just have to release it back. No, don't make that. That's not how it works. It's not how energetics works. You can't do it. And it just goes. It's not how energetics works. Your energies, your programs, the programs of, for example, judgment, resentment, unforgiveness. Oh, those are pretty common, right? When we've had somebody who hurt us. So let's stick with those simple ones to understand. Those energies running through you, grab on like a magnet, put your claws into those energies from the other person and you hold on to it and you keep it as yours. There's no such thing as releasing that because you didn't heal and alchemize your programs that are yours, that are holding on to those energies to begin with. The judgment, the resentment, the unforgiveness, that has to be alchemized by you. When you alchemize that, that is what releases its hold onto aspects of your ex, as we stick with this example. And then those old aspects can be released and sent back to them. Now, sometimes in some scenarios, you can alchemize all of it. But other times you can't. Literally, quote unquote, I'm going to say it this way to make it simple to understand. You're not allowed. Sometimes you're not allowed. Those are their lessons that person has to wake up to, has to heal on their own. You don't get to heal that for other people. That means they're children, they're powerless, and they don't take responsibility for their own shit. So sometimes, some scenarios, it can be alchemized by you. Some of it can sometimes be alchemized by you. For the most part, it is going to release back to the person it came from, and as it should. It is their responsibility for themselves to heal that garbage themselves. It's not yours.
Sounds like this is one of the instances where we need more vocabulary.
We do.
The word releasing is, there's too much there to clump it all into one word.
Yes.
Yeah. And as we evolve as a civilization, we're going to have to create some new definitions. New
language and new words will come. The more we evolve, they have to. Our language does not depict and understand and describe all of this stuff. We don't have the language for it. So as we evolve, the language will evolve to describe all of this stuff.
So with what's happening in my physical body, when I can feel that tension, is it that what I'm releasing in that area is maybe that's just, I'm releasing the physical manifestation of the energy?
Yeah.
Rather than like we're talking about releasing. If I have tension and it's coming from suppressed anger, let's say, and I suppressed, I move through the anger, I heal that, I alchemize that, and now my physical body has to now match the new vibration at which I'm at. And so that has to release too.
Yes.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Yes. So
Again, another type of releasing.
yeah. So this is beautiful. I love this. So the physical body, what happened with that wound, that program, that trauma, created all this tension, all this pain, say in your traps or your upper back or something. Let's just say that as an example. What happens is the physical body learns to conform and be that way. Okay. So the physical body responds with, oh, I'm supposed to act like this now, contract, be tight, be in pain. Okay. So that's how it learns to conform. So sometimes when we alchemize, there can then be a very fast, rapid, all the muscles, all the tension, everything relaxes, it expands, and now it functions normally. It can be an almost instantaneous relieving of symptoms, physical symptoms. Okay. Other times, that doesn't always happen. The tightness is still there, the pain is still there, but what we are alchemizing, what we are quote unquote healing, truly gets alchemized. It truly does heal. And then why am I still tight here? Why is this still? Because the physical body now needs to be worked on to say, we need you to show up tissue, we need you to show up cells as something different than we've forced you to be for the last weeks, months, years, decades of your life. Now is when it is appropriate to do what we typically think of as healing, physical therapy, rehabilitation. If we do the energetic healing, the alchemizing first, and then we treat the physical body, right? Because sometimes the physical body would just correct itself and be fine. And other times it needs more help and more assistance because it forgot how to function in the old way. So now the quote unquote healing is teaching the tissues, communicating with them in various different ways and modalities. This is how we want you to be now. And sometimes there's a rehabilitative process that works on the physical body. And as long as you're healed spiritually, mentally, emotionally, the physical body will follow suit.
Yeah, I've had so many issues and problems with my physical body that when I've gone to doctors and physical therapists, nothing has worked. And it's only until I've started healing the emotional and the mental programs that now I'm actually those terms like reprogram or rewire. I mean, that's what Joe Dispenza talks about, right?
Yes.
Rewire. That
Yes.
can, the way that I found it in my body, that can only happen, that reprogramming, that rewiring, once we've removed the trauma, the wound, the trapped energy of why you're programmed or wired in that way in the first place.
You got it. That's exactly it. We alchemize that. And then if anything else is still left in the physical manifestation from those energies, then we work on the physical body in a different way. Then we use other modalities because there's nothing blocking anymore. Clean slate. We just say, okay, now physical body, this is what we would like you to do. No more anger is trapped in here. We alchemize the anger and then we stretch the tissues and muscles. And then we bring other energies in, by the way. So you want a really elevated form of this. So if you're still super tight, let's keep it simple, like super tight. Oh, I was so tight for so long, I had all these knots. You alchemize, and let's say there's a lot of built up anger in there. You alchemize, you work with your professional, you work with your healer, you alchemize the anger. Anger's no longer trapped in your tissues, in your cells. But I'm still super tight and super, okay. So now what we infuse into the tissues and the cells is a different vibrational frequency. So we alchemized it, but now what? The tissues and cells have learned how to be this way. Tight, contracted, painful. That's what they've learned. They're just doing what you've taught them to do, so to speak. So now we infuse that with other vibrational frequencies. And this is where I use the universal ways of oneness. So we use these high vibrational frequencies, we infuse the tissues, the cells, the muscles. And while we infuse them with these high vibrational frequencies, simultaneously, we stretch, for example. We are now infusing, stretching physical a physical movement or a physical activity infused with high divine vibrational frequencies, you're going to get a much better result, and one that is long lasting and or permanent. It doesn't mean that you only need to do it one time. It depends on that person and what the problem was and how long they had it. And it doesn't mean healing cannot be instantaneous, but it's more complicated than people think, generally speaking. You know, there are a lot of layers to it. And let me say one more thing about that, because I want this part to be clear, that when people learn, but healing can just be instantaneous. So you don't know what the fuck you're talking about, because healing is just boom, it's a miracle. Just ask for a miracle. Just do a miracle. Like, that's the crap people go to. And it doesn't mean that does not exist. But we've learned and been brainwashed to come from complete powerlessness when it comes to that. So if you think you know everything about miracles, just fucking perform one on yourself. What are you talking about? Like, to understand how energy works literally is us evolving as human beings. So we don't need a miracle worker to always put their hands on us to heal us instantly. We need to get out of that powerlessness stuff. And it doesn't mean those magnificent people don't exist. We need them too. There is a place for them. There's a place for healers. There's a place for coaches. There's a place for there's a place for everyone here. That's what oneness is. But we also need to learn to evolve individually. In our own evolution, we learn and understand more about how energetics works, which means we then know how to apply it to ourselves. We also then can honor and respect a healing process. And this is the key. The healing process for you can be very different compared to him or her or them. And there are a million reasons for that. That's why if we just focus on universal ways of oneness, we learn to become the way of honoring. We learn to honor the healing process that I myself may need to go through compared to what you may need to go through. So all the steps to healing for you versus her versus them versus us, just honor your own process, because a lot of times the healing processes in and of itself is what your soul chose to go through. There are things to learn along the way. And sometimes that's why a miracle can happen for one person and a 2-year journey of healing can happen for someone else. It's purposeful. So let's learn to honor that. And then learn to also, to honor that means you're also in the way of presence with it, which means you're also in the way of surrender with it, which means you're also in the way of patience with it, which means you're also in the way of responsibility with it and compassion and all the things, all the ways of oneness. Isn't it amazing? Just become the ways of oneness and everything is divinely perfect.
But it's our programs that want it now.
Yeah.
That don't want to wait for anything.
And sometimes that's precisely why someone won't heal.
Mm. Yeah. I love, obviously you've said a lot about this, but as you were speaking, I was thinking about this session I had with someone that reprograms the subconscious mind. And what she did for me was she made this recording that she had me listen to every night that basically was, I guess, helping me reprogram my mind. And it did not help me at all, but there's so much talk about reprogramming. So where does that actually fit into this space? Like,
yeah,
can it go along with actual doing the alchemy and the healing work? Is there a place for reprogramming, or is that just another way where we bypass our wounds?
Yeah. So I love this. This is such a beautiful question. So let's understand this, that reprogramming, it doesn't, this is a tough one. I want to keep this as simple as possible. At some point, you buy a brand new laptop, and however long it takes to fill up the memory on the laptop, at some point, you have no memory left. So you want to add a new app, you want to add a new program. What happens? Doesn't work. You can't, right? So what we've learned how to do out there, and it's because of programs of, all the programs that we run collectively, we learn Okay, reprogram. I just need to add affirmations. I need to do the hypnosis. I need to do this as I fall asleep because it's theta brainwaves and it'll go into my subconscious mind and it'll reprogram. The problem is there's no alchemizing in that. So here's what happens. I did hypnosis. I was certified and I did it for years for people. And in this work, I was learning, okay, super great tool, except why were there varying, you know, there were different levels of what somebody would experience in their level of healing. And even though a lot of people that I did it with, profound effects, except shit would come back. Or it wasn't as effective with certain people compared to other people. And that was for me to learn. Like I had to learn this, right? So here's the bottom line. You're adding in programs. You're adding in programs of abundance and joy and peacefulness and calm, except energy never dies. So you're adding those programs in, but you're not alchemizing and quote unquote getting rid of, transforming, transmuting the other programs that were just blocking you from that anyway. The only reason why you don't have peace is because you have programs of non-peace. So that's stress, anxiety, whatever. Heal the shit that's in there. Just alchemize the shit the only reason why you don't experience joy is because you have programs that are the opposite of joy. So even though this can be challenging for some people, yeah, but that's what reprogramming is, isn't it? No, not when you don't really understand how energy works. Because if you are not going into the program of anxiety, stress, for example, you have to go inside of that energy and actually transform that energy. And then what's left? You're clear. You have a clean slate. And then you want to add programs in. Yes. That's what the ways of oneness are. So to use other people's work, for example, if you then want to add in calm, peace, peacefulness, great. Now you can. You've cleared out your computer memory. You have a clean slate. You can now add the apps and the new programs in. But we have to be careful when we say reprogramming. People who are doing that, they're not actually reprogramming. Reprogramming means you take the old program. What do you do with it? Most of the quote unquote reprogramming, they're not touching the old programs. They're just trying to put in new ones. And then what happens is there's a battle in there. You're putting in a program of peacefulness, except that you run the program of anxiety and stress. What does reprogramming actually mean? Remember, you're not looking up a definition in the freaking dictionary. Like you have to understand the definition on an energetic level. On an energetic level, reprogramming, so to speak, if you want to use that word, I do not use that word for a reason. You go into what are the programs preventing you, blocking you from experiencing peace? Anxiety is one, stress is another. Go inside of what is creating the anxiety, because when you understand energetics, anxiety, the program of anxiety stems from a wound. It comes from some other place. So you now have the anxiety. Let's start to alchemize that. But that leads us down into the wound of where anxiety got birthed, created to begin with. You're going back to the original creation of anxiety and you are alchemizing the wound. Now that does not exist anymore when you learn this work at Masters of Self University. That is gone. So now there's no more anxiety. What do you feel instead? A lot of beautiful things. But if you want to get specific and add in the beautiful things you specifically want to feel, the silly part about that is you don't fucking have to. It's just that's there automatically as a byproduct. If you heal and alchemize these things, what comes instead in replace of it as a byproduct of your divinity are things like unconditional love, harmlessness and gentleness, compassion, understanding, validation. These are the things that are just a byproduct of alchemizing this work, this energy, the negative energies to begin with.
It's tricky because we use the terminology programs,
Yes.
and that's how, you know, it's taught at MSU, at Master of Self University. But the definition of reprogramming outside of MSU is completely flawed. It's the analogy I always think of, because we've got this awesome like backyard area and there's weeds everywhere and there's super invasive weeds. And the type of reprogramming we teach is to dig up all of the weeds, all of their roots, and then plant some beautiful flowers. And the reprogramming that's traditionally taught before I found MSU is find a little space where there's no weeds and plant a flower. The weeds are all there, and guess what? The weeds are super invasive, so they're going to outcompete that beautiful flower. The only way for that beautiful flower to grow is to get rid of all of the weeds, to clear them all out. Plant a strawberry plant and then watch it flourish, watch it spread out and spread across the whole yard, and now you've got a beautiful yard of strawberries, providing no one's weed seeds like blow over from the next yard. It's probably going to happen. Again, another great analogy, because we're all one. We're sharing energetic space with other people.
It's beautiful.
And here comes that you become the top 5 people that you spend the most time with, which is where that whole thing comes from, because you literally absorb their energy and their programs. That thing of like, we spend a lot of time with who your closest friends, you become them. Because you're energetically in training to their energies. You're reprogramming yourself with their programs. I've picked up a few things off you, you know, not talking about like, you know, big deep wounds, but you know, there's, when you hang around with someone for long enough, you pick up little ways that you talk, and that happens. That's how we operate as human beings.
That's an example of oneness consciousness. It's perfect.
And so let's make the choice to become the ways of oneness, and instead of, you know, unconsciously letting our ego choose what programs we pick up from other people and other places, let's create a garden, and let's nourish that garden with our love. Let's nourish that garden with the way of responsibility, and the way of compassion, the way of unconditional love. And if we all choose to do that, if we all take that divine responsibility, like, we're going to have a beautiful planet full of flowers, and the weeds will be gone. So let's de-weed the garden and see how we'll do it.
Let's do it. Sounds amazing.
And you know, the beautiful thing about the ways of oneness, like today I was late for yoga and there was all this construction happening and I was freaking out. I mean, I was speeding and I had this moment where I heard, like, you're not being the way of patience right now. And it just helped me become aware of what I was running. And then I shifted and I was like, no, I'm the way of patience right now. Like, it's okay, Ellie. Like, you don't need to be going 1,000,000 miles per hour right now and like potentially hurting people. And it's like, this is what is so powerful about these ways, is how they beautifully start integrating in your life, and you just become aware of what you're running, then how you can shift in these ways. It's really beautiful.
And that's beautiful, because if you're healed of old wounds, and yet this life experience, I'm late, is starting to create new energy of the impatience, for example, that's the power of this work, is then the easiest thing in the world, drop into your heart where you're like, I am the way of patience. And it alchemizes everything that in the last few moments was not. It alchemizes instantly. That's the power of it. And that is the results that you see from that. It's off the charts. You want to talk about miracles? Like, heal first, heal our program, wake up, awaken to what programs and wounds we have, because the power of being able to use the frequency of the ways of oneness, which are who you are, you become the ways become you. You now have the power, like a freaking magician, to just say, oh my God, look, self-awareness. I'm rushing, I'm speeding. This is dangerous. I don't need to be this way. Breathe, drop in. I am the way of patience. And then boom, the way of patience just starts alchemizing all the ways you were before the last 5 minutes. You're clear, and suddenly you're the most patient person on the planet.
Yeah.
Like
That's it.
That's
Yep.
it.
Because there's a tricky line with just using as an affirmation, right? And then
Doesn't
just
work.
bypassing what's actually running. But the moment I became aware and I shifted into I could feel the energy of the way of patience.
Yep.
And then I felt myself just organically dropping in, which then shifted me into this place of like, I don't need to speed. I know that's what
There you
it
go.
was. And I could feel that I wasn't using it to just not just get through whatever. It was like,
Right.
no, I could feel the dropping in as
Yes.
I was saying it.
You got it.
Anyone listening like wants to understand what it is we're talking about, this is an academic class. Both Ellie and I are in it right now, as Rachel's guiding us through, where she does actually activate these energies for us to experience. This is something that I mentioned earlier, like energy can only be experienced. And so by being in this classroom setting, being guided by Rachel, she's able to activate the energy and then allow us to all experience what that means inside our bodies. And sometimes you can't feel them because there's clearly you've got blocks that you've got to still heal.
That's why you take the power within before you take the
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. But if you do want to have this experience and start integrating these energies, this is something we offer. It's not just here, read the book. It's here,
Right.
read the book, and now come to us, and we can start working on integrating these energies from an experience level, like having that experience. What does it feel like to be in the energy of the way of patience?
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And thank you for saying that. And Ellie said it too. Like, if you want to experience the vibrational frequency of the way of equality, for example, this is what you start to experience and learn. And I mean, learn at a soul level. The class that I teach is Introduction to the Universal Ways of Oneness. And the reason why the requirement here that we have at Masters of Self University, the prerequisite for that is to take the group, the Power Within. You take the Power Within, take that group class, take that class first, or one-on-one coaching counts. So check out the website, because in order to alchemize and clear the way and clear out, completely alchemize and transform your blocks, your wounds, you want to learn the power of that first. And then you experience the magnificence of each one of the ways of oneness. So, Introduction to the Ways of Oneness, you do experience the activations of these energetic frequencies that get anchored into you, that get anchored into your energetic fields, into your chakras. And that's part of what this class is. It's a beautiful energetic experience, but you need to make sure you know how to connect to your divine power first. You know how to alchemize and heal yourself first. And that's the Power Within. After you take the Power Within, you can take Introduction to the Universal Ways of Oneness.
Yes.
Beautiful.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Rachel, for being here with us. To anyone, it's on Amazon, Mason's Way, the 20 Universal Ways of Oneness. If you want to join our group class, Power Within, or one-on-one, set up a free consultation with us at mastersofselfuniversity.com. Share, subscribe, comment, all the things.
Yeah, smash that like button.
Smash it. Okay?
Subscribe.
Yeah, and subscribe. And until next time, we'll see you guys then. Bye.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.